Imagine this. A young black man walks into a courtroom, nervous and uncertain, hoping for justice. Instead, he's met with dismissal, his case brushed aside by a judge who barely looks him in the eye. But what no one in that courtroom realized was that fate had a twist in store. Years later, that same man, through hard work and resilience, would return to that very courtroom, not as a plaintiff, but as the judge. This is a story about perseverance, redemption, and how life has a way of coming full circle when you least expect it. How did he overcome the odds? What events led to such a dramatic reversal of roles? And what happened when the former judge faced the man who now held the gavel? Stick around as we unravel this powerful story of justice, change, and the strength to rise above. The young man, Marcus, had grown up in a neighborhood where opportunities were few and struggles were many. He had seen his family work tirelessly to make ends meet, but the odds always seemed stacked against them. When his moment came to fight for justice, an unfair eviction that left his family homeless, he believed the courtroom would be where truth prevailed. Instead, he stood before a judge who barely listened, his pleas dismissed as if they didn't matter. That day, Marcus left the courthouse with more than just disappointment. He carried a burning determination to change the system that had failed him. Over the years, Marcus poured himself into his studies, juggling odd jobs to put himself through law school. His focus was unshakable, but the memory of that courtroom stayed with him, fueling his drive. Little did anyone know, his journey was leading him right back to where it all began. As Marcus worked his way through law school, he couldn't shake the image of that judge. The dismissive tone, the way his family's pain was reduced to a footnote. It wasn't just about his case anymore. It was about all the people he'd seen ignored, their voices drowned out by a system that seemed indifferent to their struggles. He started volunteering at community legal clinics, helping those who couldn't afford representation. Every case he took on was a reminder of why he began this journey, and every victory, no matter how small, felt like a step toward redemption. Meanwhile, the judge who had once dismissed Marcus's case, Judge Henderson, was nearing the end of his career. Unaware of the path Marcus was carving for himself, Henderson remained seated on the bench, confident in his decisions and the authority he wielded. But the cracks in his legacy were beginning to show, setting the stage for a reckoning no one saw coming. Years later, Marcus had transformed his life entirely. Now an accomplished lawyer known for taking on difficult cases and fighting for the underrepresented, his name began circulating in judicial circles. When a vacancy opened on the very bench where his life had once taken a painful turn, Marcus's nomination seemed almost poetic. After a rigorous selection process, he was appointed as a judge, a moment that felt surreal yet deeply deserved. But Marcus knew the true test of his journey was still ahead. The first time Marcus walked into the courtroom as a judge, he felt the weight of his past. The same wooden walls, the same heavy silence, but now he was the one seated behind the gavel. It wasn't long before he encountered a case that brought Judge Henderson out of retirement. As Henderson stepped into the courtroom as an attorney, his eyes locked with Marcus's. Neither said a word, but the tension was undeniable. Marcus was no longer the powerless young man Henderson had dismissed. Now the balance of power had shifted. What would happen when old wounds collided with new authority? As the proceedings began, Marcus remained composed, though the sight of Judge Henderson, now seated at the defense table, was a stark reminder of how far he had come. Henderson, on the other hand, seemed unfazed, treating Marcus with the same detached confidence he once displayed years ago. But as the case unfolded, it became clear that this wasn't just any ordinary trial. The case revolved around a series of allegations against Henderson's former judicial conduct, accusations that painted a picture of favoritism and bias that had gone unchecked for decades. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as evidence surfaced, tying Henderson's decisions to patterns that had disproportionately impacted vulnerable communities. The same dismissal Marcus had faced was now part of a larger story. For Marcus, it wasn't just about delivering justice. It was about holding the very system accountable. But Henderson wasn't ready to go down without a fight, and his defense revealed secrets about Marcus's past that no one expected. But just as the final arguments were being made, Henderson's defense took a sharp turn. His lawyer presented a document from years ago, an affidavit claiming Marcus's family had falsified details in their original case, the very one Henderson had dismissed. The room froze. Marcus, now faced with questions about his own family's truth, had to make a choice: defend his past or focus on the present injustice. In a powerful moment, Marcus set aside personal feelings and ruled based on evidence. Henderson was found culpable, his reputation dismantled. But as the courtroom emptied, Henderson approached Marcus privately. "I dismissed you once," he said bitterly, "and now you've dismissed me." Marcus met his gaze. "No," he replied, "I gave you what you denied me: fairness." The weight of the moment hung heavy, signaling not just an ending, but a new beginning. As Henderson left the courtroom, his footsteps echoed with a mix of defeat and reflection. For Marcus, it wasn't a victory to celebrate, but a moment to reflect on how justice isn't about revenge. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. The system that once dismissed him had finally been challenged, and though it was far from perfect, change felt possible. Back in his chambers, Marcus sat quietly, thinking of his journey, from that frightened young man to the one holding the gavel. He knew his work wasn't done. There were still countless people like his younger self, hoping for a fair chance, and he vowed to make his courtroom a place where every voice mattered. The story of Marcus and Henderson was more than a clash of past and present. It was a reminder that justice is a path shaped by resilience, fairness, and the courage to stand tall against all odds.